Welcome back to Whispers in the Shadows HQ, where we uncover the truths hidden in darkness. Tonight we explore a side of crime most people never expect. The killers you'd least suspect, women. They are mothers, wives, grandmothers, and nurses. They offer a smile, a helping hand, or a promise of love, all while hiding unimaginable intentions. Join us as we count down the top 10 female killers you won't believe existed. Our journey into the abyss begins with Aileen Wuornos, the so-called Damsel of Death. In the late 1980s, the sun-drenched highways of Florida became her hunting ground. To the world, she was a troubled woman living on the fringes, selling her company to survive. But beneath that desperate exterior was a coiled spring of rage, forged in a lifetime of trauma and abuse. She claimed her victims were men who picked her up, asserting that she killed in self-defense. But as the bodies of 7 men were discovered, a different, more chilling narrative emerged, one of a predator, not a victim. Her story, a grim cocktail of vengeance and survival, became a media sensation, forcing society to confront the uncomfortable truth that a woman could be a highway hunter. Next, we travel north to Canada, to a seemingly perfect suburban life that concealed a horrifying partnership. Meet Karla Homolka. To the outside world, she and her husband, Paul Bernardo, were a golden couple, their wedding photos radiating youthful happiness. But behind closed doors, that picture-perfect facade crumbled into a nightmare. Karla was not just a bystander. She was an active participant in some of the most heinous crimes the nation had ever seen. When the truth finally surfaced, her role as Bernardo's accomplice shocked everyone. But the biggest shock was yet to come. Her controversial plea deal, which allowed her to serve a fraction of the time her husband received, sparked outrage and a debate about justice and culpability that continues to this day. Now, imagine your sweet, caring grandmother, the one who offers you cookies and a warm place to stay. That was Dorothea Puente. In the 1980s, she ran a respectable boarding house in Sacramento, California, known for taking in the elderly, the disabled, and the down on their luck. She was a pillar of her community, a kindly landlady who looked after those society had forgotten. But when a social worker noted the mysterious disappearance of one of her tenants, a dark secret began to unravel. Police began digging in her perfectly manicured garden, and what they found was beyond comprehension. The remains of her tenants systematically poisoned and buried. Dorothea had been cashing their social security checks for years, turning her home into a private cemetery hidden in plain sight. From a kindly landlady to a cheerful grandmother, our next case is just as unnerving. Meet Nanny Doss, better known as the Giggling Granny. Active from the 1920s to the 1950s, Nanny was a woman seemingly in search of true love, marrying multiple times. But her husbands had a peculiar habit of dying unexpectedly. So did her mothers, her sisters, and even one of her grandchildren. Through it all, Nanny maintained a bright, cheerful demeanor, often giggling as she recounted the string of tragedies that followed her. The truth was far more sinister. Armed with rat poison and a warm smile, she methodically eliminated her family members one by one. Her motivation was a cold mix of greed for insurance money and, as she confessed, a strange sense of amusement she found in her deadly deeds. Our descent into darkness now takes us to 1930s Italy, to the small town of Correggio, where we find Leonarda Cianciulli. A superstitious and intensely protective mother, Leonarda lived in constant fear of losing her beloved son, who was about to be sent to fight in World War II. Desperate to save him, she became convinced that only a human sacrifice could protect him from harm. Her victims were 3 local women who came to her for advice. Believing they were on their way to a new life, they instead met a gruesome end. In a truly bizarre and horrific twist, Leonarda didn't just dispose of the bodies. She rendered their fat into soap and, in one instance, mixed their blood into the batter for tea cakes, which she then served to unsuspecting guests. It was a chilling fusion of maternal devotion and macabre ritual. From a mother's twisted sacrifice, we move to the bustling streets of Mexico City and a killer who used a cultural icon as her disguise. In the early 2000s, a wave of fear gripped the city as a serial killer began targeting elderly women in their own homes. The culprit was dubbed Mataviejitas, or the Old Lady Killer. The police sketches depicted a person with a large masculine build, leading investigators to believe they were hunting a man. They were wrong. The killer was Juana Barraza, a former professional luchadora or wrestler who performed under the name the Silent Lady. Posing as a government nurse, she would gain the trust of her vulnerable victims, only to strangle them once inside. Her story shocked Mexico, revealing a killer hiding behind a mask of both fame and service. Now let's travel back in time to Victorian England, a period of stark contrasts between public morality and private vice. Here we meet Mary Ann Cotton, one of Britain's most prolific serial killers, long before Jack the Ripper stalked the streets of London. Moving from town to town, Mary Ann would marry, have children, and then watch as her new family members succumbed to what appeared to be gastric fever. But it wasn't illness. It was arsenic, carefully administered in their tea. With each death, she collected a small insurance payout before packing her bags and finding her next unsuspecting husband. For 2 decades she flew under the radar, her trail of bodies stretching across northern England. She poisoned as many as 21 people, including her own mother and 11 of her children. In our number 3 spot is a woman entrusted with the care of the sick and vulnerable, Jolly Jane Topham. A respected nurse in Massachusetts during the late 19th century, Jane was known for her cheerful bedside manner. But her patients had a disturbingly high mortality rate. What no one knew was that Jane was conducting her own twisted experiments. She would administer morphine overdoses, bringing her patients to the brink of death, then reviving them, just to see what would happen. Her ultimate goal, she later confessed, was a chilling one: to have killed more people, helpless people, than any other man or woman who ever lived. She derived a thrill from holding life and death in her hands, turning a place of healing into her personal laboratory of death. Coming in at number 2 is a case from Australia, a story so brutal it left even seasoned detectives speechless. Katherine Knight. Her life was marked by extreme, escalating violence long before her final infamous act. Her relationships were volatile, punctuated by terrifying rage, but it was the murder of her partner, John Price, in 2000 that cemented her name in the annals of Australian crime. The crime scene was one of the most gruesome investigators had ever encountered, involving a level of post-mortem desecration that is simply too disturbing to detail fully. The act was so shocking that Katherine Knight became the first woman in Australia to be sentenced to life in prison without parole, forever labelled as the country's most terrifying woman. And now, our number 1 most unbelievable female killer, Belle Gunness, the Black Widow of Laporte. In the early 1900s, this Norwegian immigrant ran a farm in Indiana that would become a field of nightmares. After her own husband's mysterious death, Belle began placing Lonely Hearts ads in newspapers, luring wealthy bachelors and widowers to her farm with promises of marriage and a comfortable life. She told them to sell their assets, bring the cash, and tell no one where they were going. Once they arrived, they were never seen again. For years, she poisoned and dismembered her suitors, burying their remains in her hog pen. When her farm mysteriously burned down in 1908, authorities began to dig. They unearthed the remains of dozens of victims, though the true number may never be known. Belle herself vanished, leaving behind a legacy as one of America's most monstrous and enigmatic killers. From charm to cruelty, compassion to calculation, these women prove that evil knows no face. It can hide behind a smile, a uniform, or a promise of love, reminding us that the deepest darkness often resides where we least expect it. This has been Whispers in the Shadows HQ. For more true crime stories that uncover the darkness within, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thank you for watching.